Welcome back to the build, guys. As you can see behind me, we have the house almost completely framed and sheathed. Yes, this takes a long time. I've been on the phone with my structural engineer about once or twice a week just to check on things because there are some delicate areas in the house. I want to make sure that everything is done exactly right. I don't want to make enemies when I say this, but the only way to make sure that everything is done exactly right is to check it and test it. So I am here, I am the builder, I am checking things. We're almost to the phase where we can start testing things. You'll see a video upcoming with some infrared on the thermostat sheathing, which is the roof sheathing on the house, has a radiant barrier built into it. Some of you are upset that we're using radiant barrier. I'll show you why it does work when installed in the right places. But today, we're talking about black stuff. And so I'm wearing my favorite color in honor of what we're about to do. You can see it installed in the top part of the top floor roof already. This is what I'm talking about. It's called Solitex Mento. It's a roof underlayment, which means it's watertight, but it's vapor permeable, which means that it can dry, it lets whatever is behind it dry. And it's also airtight. Substantially airtight. We learned in home chem that nothing in a house is truly airtight according to the way the chemists look at things, but that's okay because we're trying to just hit blower door numbers with this. So this is going to go on top of the OSB sheathing on the roof. I will show you exactly how this works. You've seen this before if you've watched the channel for a while. It's the black shroud is what I call it generally. This is Solitex Mento 3000, not 1000, which is what we've used before. This has built into it, this strip right here is a tape strip. So there's one at the top inside and one at the bottom outside, so that when you lay this down in shingle pattern, you just peel off these tape strips and it tapes itself. So you don't have to then come along with the Vanna, which is the blue sealing tape at all the seams. That's kind of a brilliant development. I'm very happy about that. It makes it a lot faster. So I will be using a staple gun to tack this in place, and then I will be able to tape over or outside of those staple holes. I may be using this Tescon Vanna, which is the air sealing tape, for any areas that aren't able to be taped doubly with these strips that are installed on the Mento itself. I'm going to be using a presser, a little squeegee. These things, you will burn through them and like rub them away if you're actually really pressing hard. That's because all of this stuff is pressure activated tape. So it needs pressure in order to start curing. This is all stuff from 475 High Performance Building Supply. You can get the samples in little pamphlets like this so that you can touch them. Now let me show you just how this works. First, you put the lower level. So I'm going to do the very bottom portion of the roof first. Make sure that it's overlapping the force field so that I can seal that. Then I'm going to have this tape strip here. I'm going to overlap that with the upper levels tape strip so that when water comes along this, it's going to shed. And all I have to do is peel off the protective backing and then press the two together. And I want to press them pretty firmly. That's why I'm using things like that squeegee. But even if I do a pretty half-assed job, you can see that this stuff is pretty hardcore. I'm not able to rip it apart, even though I didn't even press it with the squeegee. This stuff really needs 24 hours, I believe, to fully cure and become its full strength. But this is the system that we're going to be using to make sure that this place is going to last 100 years of airtightness. That's a thing that these ProClima tapes that really have going for them. So you can get all this stuff at 475 High Performance Building Supply in the States, and in Europe, you have it a lot closer to home. And this is what it looks like when we're done. So a couple things. Number one, I'm covered in sawdust. That is because we're putting this on just after we finished the roof sheathing, which is OSB, which is very crumbly, and you're cutting it, and so you're going to get covered in this stuff. This stuff is going to get covered in this. The back side of this is sitting on some of that. We also have things like nails involved. And so the nail heads might be not completely down, or those little plastic bits that you saw me complain about that are part of the nail, the way that they have the nail stuck together when they put it into the nail gun, might be right there, and it might poke up through this. So this is, first of all, it's about to rain. The first way you can tell that it's about to rain at our house is that they redirect the planes from the Atlanta airport right over us. So sorry about that. But it's good that we got this down right before it does rain. So you can see that it's scuffed and that there are little damages. This is a 3-layer roof underlayment. So the top layer is this fleece layer that is kind of a sacrificial layer. It is intended to get beat up because it's made to go on a roof where you're going to be walking on it. Also, this stuff has an exposure of somewhere between 4 and 6 months. But I want to be a little faster than that. Nobody should have this out for that long. But you can use it as a kind of a temporary roof covering. It's too good for that, in my opinion. So I want it to be here for 100 years. That being said, these scuffs, where it gets intense or a little nail head or a little piece of plastic pokes up through, you will find that after we're done, once it does rain. I can take a walk under this roof and find all the puddles on the floor, and I will look up, I'll see a seam in the OSB, and above that somewhere, I'll find a little hole, which I can simply fix with a small square of Vanna. So I will be coming back along after I'm done beating this up. We're gonna, next steps are, we have to make sure that this is all totally taped down, where we have things like, for example, this, where we're going over the eave. I told you already there are gonna be eaves built out from this. So I'm gonna need to put a piece of tape, butyl tape, here to make sure that this 2x12 that I'm about to attach isn't gonna be interrupting this, and potentially if water does eventually find its way down through this seam, and there will be more Mento put over that seam, but I'm trying to be as redundant as possible without being ridiculous. The butyl tape will go here. I want to make sure that this seam is airtight, because just because there's a ledger here that's attached every 16 inches on center, it doesn't mean that it's going to result in an airtight layer. So I'm going to go ahead and redundantly put a layer of Vanna here. I'm overlapping over the force field. And that's just simply for drainage. So that's the same as you would flash anything else. So anywhere we have an eave, it's this same exact detail where we go over the edge by 6 inches, I tape it, we make sure that all that is there. And then you can see here where we've got this little knee wall. Number one, we tape the bottom edge, and the Mento is lapped up underneath this force field by about 6 inches to a foot. And so even if water was someday to get through this, when 100 years from now this stops working, it'll have to go up 6 inches to a foot to get into the house. That's all to the good. So I like all that stuff. This stuff is set up off the deck by the 1/8 inch, which we always want. And then over this is going to go exterior insulation, even up over the ledger between where we've got the eave members coming out. So exterior insulation on all the walls, no exterior insulation on the roof. That's because the energy model told us that that's not necessary. We have R38 in our roof. And then we're going to do the butyl back tape here so that we can make sure that when our battens go down, and the battens are going to go this way, it's going to be core event, those are going to be not penetrating this airtight, watertight, vapor open underlayment. The reason you don't see people do this in your neighborhood when they're building, it's an extra process. It is normally done in things like valleys where you have like an ice and water shield would go down, and that's to make sure that you don't get ice damming or water that finds its way into a valley and then gets backed up because of whatever seams or changes in geometry. So you might have this in parts of other houses, but we put this everywhere because airtightness, and because we want to be really redundant. There's a thing called belt and suspenders. Belt and suspenders means you're absolutely certain that your pants are going to get held up. That's a good thing. You want to make sure in general, and some of the builders who are watching this right now who have been doing it their way for 40 years are saying, that's not belts and suspenders, that's glasses and contacts. It's going to give you a headache. It's ridiculously redundant. It's not going to work, right? So glasses and contacts at the same time, not the same thing. You really do want to make sure that you are not being overly redundant. For that reason, I did really plan this out, but we do have 2 airtightness layers, this one and the one on the inside. Some people are going to hate that. They're going to think that it's glasses and contacts. I don't think so. We tested this out on the Tiny Lab, and so we know for a fact that it works using a tried and true process. We already know how to apply this, so we're very happy about it. And now the tape is going to go on in the places where it needs to go. We're going to make sure that we've corrected all the dings. You'll see us put on the eaves. I think that we're going to get to backfilling in a minute because of some of the details that we've had to wait for. And I will explain that in the next video. So please do comment, like, subscribe. If you have anything to say, tune in next time.